Hey everybody, it's Tara here, and I want to talk about the root of most trauma. And I'm going to put a little caveat in here to say that we're talking about from 12 years on, like 12-year-old to adulthood, not really pre that. And so, in my interesting opinion, the root of most trauma is all about where you put your trust, where you give your trust away, where you root your trust in. And when you give your trust anywhere but in yourself, it is the root. It's the root of trauma because it leaves little awareness on your part in order to see what's really happening, because you give the trust to the other person in order to take care of you, to always show up the best, and so on. So that's in theory, right? Like, that's great to say. I'm going to share some stories and see if they resonate with you. And again, don't put your trust in me. Ask yourself if this is truth for you. That's what's most important, is ask yourself whether you agree, disagree, whether you've had experience with this, whether it's something else entirely, whether it has a little bit of truth or a lot of truth for you. So I'm going to use myself as an example first, and then I'm going to share some stories of people and why they've come to me and how I've helped them. So when I was 16, long time ago, I was a good girl, right? But I trusted my friends who invited me to a party at their house. And I was good in the fact that they told me that I could spend the night. Parents were home. Everything was good, right? Like, my parents were like, hey, okay, this is great. Now, I drank at that party. It was probably, I'm going to have to say, it was the first time I ever drank and had wine. And it affected me a lot. I didn't have to go anywhere because I was spending the night. But I trusted the environment that I was in, and I gave my trust to the environment even more than I gave the trust to myself. Luca, my dog, is like, let's go outside and let's play. Anyways, and in that environment, something happened that made me reevaluate how I go into any situation after that. While I was there, the dad decided to use me as a training tool to teach others how to massage the entire body. Now, I was so affected by the alcohol that I felt like I didn't even have words to say no, or at least they were like quiet. They weren't right outright. Nor did I feel like I had the energy to move. It was a weird state of place for me, not one I had ever been in before. And so as I lay upon the floor, completely aware, but really without the full ability to respond, they just proceeded to massage my body. Like, I was laying face down, luckily, but they massaged my entire back, my legs, my butt, all of it. Did I want it to happen? No. Did I feel like I could change it? No. So as I woke up the next day, nothing else had happened. So it's not a huge trauma. However, it wasn't something that I would have chosen had I had the capacity to say no or to move, right? As I woke up the next day, I was still under the influence of alcohol, as in I could just still feel in my body. I was still able to like function and so on, but it changed the way I felt. But I put my trust in my friends that it would be a safe environment. And as soon as I put my trust in them, I stopped evaluating, right? I also trusted them that drinking was fine, even though I'd been told that it could have an effect on me. I thought, oh, my friends are doing it, it'll be fine. And I didn't evaluate, like, I didn't stay in attention as to like how things were changing for me. And so afterwards, I did evaluate. I didn't have anybody who knew about it. Like I didn't share any of it with anyone. I just evaluated for myself that I felt unsafe. I did things that made me not be able to take care of myself. And that even with an adult there, the adult made me feel like put me in a place where I was unsafe. And so I had put my trust in the adult that was there, the parent, that like I would be in a safe environment. And it wasn't a safe environment for me. And so after that, I made really clear, conscious choices that I would always have my own back, that I wouldn't put myself in situations where I couldn't choose and have the capacity to speak, move, do the things that I needed to make sure that I was not just safe, but feeling okay. Because the other thing that happened that night is I told a boy who was probably 2 years older than me that I loved him, that like I thought he was beautiful. Now, that could just be like something funny, but it's not something where if I was in my right mind, I would have wanted to speak those words. And I wasn't in love with him. I barely knew him. And so I'm really thankful that he didn't take those to heart and anything happened because of the state of mind that I was in. And so also, I like to make sure that I'm in a capacity that I can trust myself to speak the words that I want to speak out into the world and to other people at all times. So making sure that I have my own back and that I can trust me is really important. I'm going to give a second story of an older age that I was, where I put my complete trust in someone else and instead of in myself and my awarenesses. This was my husband at the time. And so many of you might think, but you're supposed to. You should be able to trust certain people in your life. You should be able to trust your parents. You should be able to trust your spouse. You should be able, like there's probably a list of shoulds that you should be able to trust. And not that I'm in disagreement with you, but here's the thing. The person that you need to trust more than anyone else, and that we often give away, we give our trust to somebody else to hold, is ourselves. We need to stay in awareness at all times so that we're trusting ourselves and what we're receiving, some information that's coming in. Okay. And so I remember I was, 37, 38 years old, and things were coming at me about like he was making choices that were weird and I didn't understand. They didn't feel good to me. And I would say that. And I remember talking to my dad and saying, things are off. Like, this is what's going on. And he was like, you need to start checking up on him. And I said, oh, I would be a very bad wife if I didn't trust my husband. And if I started checking up on him, like, I'm just not going to do that. I didn't want to be a bad person. I didn't want to take my trust from him and to check on him. And so I turned a blind eye to what he was doing because in my mind, he was my husband. He loved me and he deserved trust and he was trustworthy. Carte blanche, right? He just, to me, he got trust because he was my husband, because I chose to make him my husband to have a life with him. And so I ignored any warning sign and I listened to his words. And so at one point I actually did ask him, like, hey, is something going on? Because there's somebody at work that I know who's having an affair and everything that she's telling me seems so similar to you. And he looked me straight into the eyes and he said, I couldn't look you in the eyes if I were doing something like that to you. You know me better than anyone else. And so you would know if I was. Please don't ever ask me that again. And so in that moment, I trusted his words and I distrusted my intuition, what my body was screaming at me. And my body was screaming at me in many ways. And so a lot of people think that it's all through your brain. But my body was telling me, and it was there were times where I felt repulsed being around him, and I didn't understand. And I made myself wrong for feeling repulsed. If he put his hand on me, if he touched me, if he wanted me in any way, like I felt repulsed. And I kept thinking, what in the hell's going on? This is your husband. Why are you feeling this way? My body was giving me a safety zone that I wasn't consciously giving myself. And I wasn't asking what's going on, that all of a sudden things are shifting inside of me. Like, what is happening? I didn't ask any questions. I just told it to stop. And that as a good wife, I needed to sort that out. And as a good wife, I needed to trust my husband. And I was willing to distrust myself. And because he told me with his words, and I believed his words, right? And so what I would say to you is, sorry, my dog is like, hey, what's going on? What I would say to you is trust the other information that you're receiving and start asking more questions. Don't always like react to what your intuition is saying. Like, ask more questions, dig deeper. It's okay to investigate. It's okay in all situations, not just the one that's as big as what I have, because the greatest person that you have on your side and who should be having your back more than anyone else is you. Now, I want to go into how some clients have reached out to me recently about even like their teenagers and such. And teenagers, I work with a lot of teenagers where they go, oh my gosh, but my boyfriend, like, I trust him, or I trust my best friend, like I trust them completely. Well, here's the thing, whether chemicals are involved or it's something else like emotions, you need to tap into yourself at all times. Everyone needs to be evaluated in every situation. That doesn't mean they're 100% trustworthy or they're 100% not. It could be a situation where you don't trust. Like if somebody's highly emotional, whether it's they're really angry or really sad, I don't want them driving me somewhere. If I'm highly emotional, I don't want me driving me anywhere, let alone my children or somebody else that I care about. In those situations, I don't trust my capacities or I don't trust their capacities. That doesn't mean they're untrustworthy. It just means I'm not going to put my well-being in your hands in this moment. I'm going to put it in my own hands and make different choices. And so I really say this to all teenagers, not just girls. Make sure that you're in a capacity, that you're trusting your ability to put yourself in a safe environment, and that at all times you don't give that trust away to anyone else. So for girls, make sure that you don't put your trust in someone else, that if you're under an influence of alcohol or any other substances, you could be making choices that you would regret the next day. Don't trust that somebody else who is or isn't under the influence is going to make better choices than you and keep you safer than you're keeping yourself. And to boys, I say the same thing. I've got boys. Make sure that everywhere that you are, you have the capacity to make choices that make sure that you're safe. Whether they're your own choices or that you're making choices that are wise for yourself on who you're hanging out with, what car you're getting into, whether it's an adult, another teenager, a friend, somebody who's an acquaintance, anything. Make sure you're tapping in and asking the questions of whether your choice right now is one that is going to foster your well-being and allow you to stay safe. So again, I go back to whenever we root our trust in someone or something else beyond ourselves, and we don't actually tap in and ask the questions and come back to ourselves to be the most trustworthy ones. My dog is so funny. He's like, it's time to stop and go out and have fun. It's really important for all of us to put the trust back in ourselves, to ask the questions, to make sure that we are safe, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, and everything else. I'm going to end with a softer story, because like some of these have been like really intense, and it could just be like You find somebody in your life that you just meet. It could be a friend, right? And you're thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, that person could be the greatest friend. And then you project onto them expectations of like, oh my gosh, we're going to hang out all the time. Like, they're going to have my back. They're going to want to be around me. They're going to like take care of my emotions. And simply, they may not have the capacity, the time, the wherewithal to do all the things that make you feel cared for. It's really important to not put your trust in somebody else that may not be able to show up in the way that you need them to, unless they have the capacity to do it. And that doesn't make them wrong. Their life could be too busy. You might need a friend that is like able to like hang out with you all the time, and they don't have the capacity to do that. So make sure that you're tapping in and trusting yourself to have who you need in your life, show up for yourself, and to know whether somebody can and desires to show up for you in that way. Thanks so much for tuning in today with me and with Luca, because Luca's definitely been an active participant today. Please put in the comments what your thoughts are on this, and let me know if there's other subjects that you would like to talk about, and we could discuss what some of the deeper causes and roots for your unhappiness, sadness, or trauma are, so that you can move to a space of greater joy, ease, and clarity. Thanks so much, and hit the like button if you want to see more of my videos. Thanks.